Hello, I'm Bob from Bob's Workshop. A few years ago, there was a series on TV based on a book called The Man in the High Castle. I really liked that series, and it imagines what the world would look like had Germany won the Second World War and then occupied the United States. So, based on that book and that series, I took a couple of old Williams trains and repainted them to look like they were in service of these German occupying forces. This was originally 4 videos, I think, on 2 trains, but I put them all together here in one longer video because I think they share a theme, and it's been a while since I looked at them, and I hope you enjoy seeing them for the first time, or maybe you're seeing them again. But here are 2 trains that I made for the Man in the High Castle. I hope you like it. The Man in the High Castle was written by Philip K. Dick and published in 1962. The story begins in that same year and imagines what the world would be like if the Axis powers had won World War II. Amazon Prime has adapted the book into a series that spans 4 seasons and a total of about 41-hour episodes. America is now ruled by Nazis in the east. Japanese forces occupy most of the west coast, with a neutral zone splitting the country in half. This was a heck of a deal about a year ago. The items were identified incorrectly by the seller, so these did not even pop up on most buyers' radar. They're actually Williams F7s, and they're also pretty much basket cases. But the shells are complete, and they're unbroken. I was able to repair both the dummy frame and get one of the powered bases to work. But this is the last shell that I have for repainting, so I want to make it something special. I want this to be a good one. This is what one of the green Pennsylvania shells became. It's an Amtrak design that I came up with for their 50th anniversary. It's completely repainted, and I printed the decals myself using clear inkjet decal paper. I especially liked the stripes. I think they fit pretty well in that lower area between the front and the rear doors, and they look kind of patriotic, I think. One thing I would change if I were to do this over again would be to leave the nose completely black. The red just above the front coupler looks like cartoonish lipstick.
But there's still a lot that I like about this model, and I'll reuse some of its design elements in this latest F7 repaint. I already have a pretty clear image of the completed shell, but there's a fair amount of prep work before I can even think about applying new paint. The gold lettering is easily removed with wet sanding, and the Pennsylvania keystone is just a decal. I'll do the stripes again, but instead of red, white, and blue, I'll try black, white, and red. The glossy black roof will be done in a satin black. The nose will be red, just like an Amtrak Phase 1 paint scheme, but the sides will not be silver this time. What about a dark gray? Something just a little bit sinister. A storm cloud, torrential downpour of a color that some people might know as, you guessed it, Panzer Gray. There will be some minor touch-ups later on, but in general, I'm pretty happy with the first 4 colors. The Tamiya tape does a really nice job at separating the various stripes and different paints. All that's left before decals is to spray the satin black onto the roof. That nice, straight area just above the side vents is perfect for a transition between the black and the Panzer Gray. And again, the Tamiya tape comes through like a champ. It also helps that there is so little contrast between the 2 shades, and the result is darn near factory quality. The German cross decals are pretty new, but the numbers for the locomotive are at least 20 years old. They cracked into separate pieces while in the water, but they're still usable. The seam is barely noticeable, and I'll seal them later with a clear glossy spray that matches the sheen of the other areas. The slogan on the side was written on a lot of German trains during World War II, and it roughly translates into "Wheels must roll for victory." These were not decals that I could find already made, so I made them myself with my computer and some white inkjet decal paper. An F7 would have been a fairly common sight in 1962. And this is what one might have looked like in Philip K. Dick's The Man in the High Castle. This was going to be the opening for a Williams locomotive repaint. It's here because I spent a lot of time on the animation for a Back to the Future theme, but I was never 100% sold on the idea. Notice how it's 10:04 on the VCR. That's when the clock tower in Back to the Future gets struck by lightning. I liked doing this animation way more than the thought of actually making the Back to the Future train itself. I wanted this big silver train to look like a larger version of the DeLorean. I wanted blue lights behind the front and rear panels, like the car, but I couldn't really figure it out. The shell itself is pretty beat up, and it was cheap. It was only $10 on eBay. But the real benefit was that I have another complete E60, and I was thinking that these two could share bases. I went on to repaint this Williams locomotive to look like part of the fleet from another of my favorite movies, Silver Streak. I really like the way it turned out, but I still need to find a way to use that banged up shell. The flat sides are pretty much perfect for decals or painted stripes of some sort, but what to do? The original graphics are an odd mix of decals and adhesive stickers for the stripes. Getting rid of the decals was pretty easy, but the glue for the stripes, that turned into a real pain. I tried mineral spirits, paint thinner, nail polish remover, but the only thing that actually removed the old glue was Goo Gone. It worked really well, but the areas where it was used really need to be degreased before you even think about applying the new paint. The Goo Gone must have some sort of oil in it, and it creates these weird little fisheye areas in any kind of paint that's applied over it unless it's completely cleaned off. It's finally clear of all of the sticker residue, and I've wet sanded the larger flat areas. Now it's time for some modifications. I don't have the pantograph that should go on the roof, so I'll remove this area completely. A rotary tool with a cutoff wheel is great in this case, but the friction also melts a bit of the plastic as it cuts. But it's nothing that a hobby knife and a crap ton of sanding can't fix. The roof opening is now squared up, even and smooth. I'd like to add a floor, or maybe you would call it a deck type area within, and I'll use this square tubing to create a consistent depth. More square tubing, smaller this time, will help define the area above the roofline. There are a few round openings that I won't be reusing. If I heat up this leftover piece of plastic, I can stretch it and make a tapered plug that will be cemented in place and then trimmed flush. I think this is a better solution than just modeling putty all by itself. I'll still use a touch of filler, then sand this whole area. The resulting patch should blend in pretty well. I'm not sure what purpose it would serve in real life, but I'll cap off the roof opening with round tubing. I still haven't said what this area is for, have I? Is it a stage? Is it an observation area? Will it be a hot tub or pool for an eccentric billionaire? I'm not going to say at this point, but I will show you eventually. Just not in this video. Not today. From the box of unbuilt, unfinished, and perhaps unloved model kits come these roof exhaust fans, which in a former life would have been idler wheels on a 1/35th scale Tiger tank. Another piece of sheet styrene is trimmed to fit, and it will serve as the platform within the rear of the locomotive. More parts from the Tiger tank were used to break up spaces and to help differentiate this from an ordinary Williams E60. There's something that I've always wanted to try with this shell. It's large enough, and I think it'll work, because I've always liked Vista Dome passenger cars. I'm pretty sure I can create a similar area just above and behind the lower driving compartment. It won't have a glass roof, but it will have windows on the sides and the front. More of the roof needs to be removed before I can begin making the window frames from solid, not hollow this time, pieces of plastic strips. There was a lot of fiddling with angles and beveled edges to get the new pieces to match the slope of the side vents of the original E60 shell. That piece of plastic that looks like a headboard behind the side frames will be trimmed later, once I have a clearer idea of what the roof will look like. It would have made my day so much easier if I had made the forward-facing window just flat and in one piece. But I wanted the windscreen above to at least match the basic shape of the cab's two windshields below. I also struggled with the roof. Should I trim the edges flush with the sides, or does a bit of an overhang make sense? Ultimately, the overhang won out, mainly because if I didn't like it down the road, I could always cut it down and sand it to match the sides and the front. That big thing on the roof might eventually have a light in it, and its shape is supposed to match the area above the windows of the driving compartment. It may or may not be permanent. I can't decide. But it's fine for now. I sprayed primer onto the areas that I modified, mainly to get an idea of what this might look like as one unified shell and not just a bunch of random parts glued together. In a future episode, I'll paint this and add graphics. The third installment will finally reveal and fill that rooftop opening at the rear. What goes in this new opening towards the rear? Well, how about quad 20mm anti-aircraft guns? I remember now why I stopped building model kits. So many tiny little unbreakable parts, and so many tedious steps and instructions. This size is especially tiny too. 1/48 scale is perfect for O-gauge trains, but everything is so small. That's specifically why I like buying 1/43 scale cars and military vehicles that are already assembled. You don't have to do all this stuff. Tamiya kits are incredibly well designed. Once the parts are cleanly trimmed, they go together perfectly. I'm not going to change this kit in any way. I'm going to put it together just straight and stock from the box. I'm not going to build the trailer for it because I won't be needing it. This is an anti-aircraft gun that's going to be mounted on top of a wartime train. When I'm finished, this particular item will be made from maybe 30 or 40 individual parts, but it's really not too bad. I still wouldn't want to do it again though. I'm finally getting to the fun parts. The four 20mm cannons, when these little pieces finally start to take the recognizable shape of an anti-aircraft gun. I'm almost finished with the assembly. The mechanism for the gun sight is the last thing to do before I start painting. This will be the location for the Locomotives air defense system. In the next video, I'll paint the train and apply custom decals made with inkjet decal paper and my MacBook. In part 1 of this makeover, I added an upper deck observation area just behind the cab. I fabricated this rectangular piece on the rooftop to match the headlamp enclosure just above the windscreen, and it does a fairly good job, but I think I can do better. The rotary tool removes most of the original area, and sanding removes what's left to leave a smoother rooftop for a new headlight surround. I'll use sheet plastic to make new ones at each end, and these will very closely match the one on top of the observation area. strictly speaking, the original E60 doesn't have a front or rear. It's meant to be driven in either direction. But for this model, the observation area will now be considered to be at the front. But I'll retain the rearward-facing cab for emergency situations. So that means that both ends will get the new headlight enclosures. I think I'm finally done with modifications. I still need to drill some holes for clear LEDs to serve as headlights, but now I can turn my attention to paint. This area around the opening will be gray, but the roof will end up being black. When this project is finished, I will have used 5 different spray colors. The first color for the sides will be white, and I usually spray white first because it seems to take the longest time to cure. Masking too soon can leave patterns or blemishes in paint that's not fully dry. So I usually give white about a week. Now this time the white was fine, but it was the second color that took more than a week to harden up. What's up, Panzer Gray? You're usually my boy. The red nose went smoothly, and I topped it off with one of my new favorite colors, Satin Canyon Black from Rust-Oleum, for the roof. Canyon Black satin spray paint from Rust-Oleum is what I've used in the past to restore the roofs of several Amtrak diesels from Lionel. It's a great roof color and is barely distinguishable from Lionel's factory paint, so I used it here too. Here is where it pays to not be cheap. Tamiya fine modeler's tape costs a bit more, but it comes in various widths and pretty much guarantees a straight line with little to no seep through. It's good stuff. Technology is pretty awesome. Being able to design and print decals at home is something I never could have imagined 30 years ago. Now I do it all the time. Once the printer ink is dry, I spray the sheet with a glossy clear coat, and a few hours later, they're ready to cut and apply. I'm a little limited by the white decal paper, but that's another reason for the white stripe on the shell. I usually use a decal setting solution, but it hasn't worked well with inkjet decal paper. Setting solution is great for softening decals to conform to raised or irregular surfaces, but this E60 has very flat and smooth sides. These crosses on the nose are the only decals that I didn't make for this model. They came from eBay, and I think they belong on a 1/48 scale airplane. But they look just as good on a 1/48 scale locomotive. I'll just reinstall the original cab glass at the front and rear, but I need to make my own for the new observation area. Masking tape can be used to make a template before the final shape is cut from an old plastic display box that I've been saving. The Tamiya kit came with a few boxes and extra ammo containers. I painted these, and I'm just going to hold them in place with a little bit of super glue around the area where the anti-aircraft gun will be mounted. The Man in the High Castle is a book that imagines what life in America would be like if Germany had won the Second World War. Amazon turned the book into a TV series which shows Nazi monorails connecting major cities, but they probably had trains too, I would guess. Which is why I converted this Williams E60. If you're a fan of alternate histories, especially those dealing with World War II, check out either the book or the TV series. I think you would like either one. At some point in the future, I'll get around to adding LEDs for lighting, but for now, I think I'm done. This is just one of 3 shells I own that share the same motorized base. The other shells are decorated for Amroad from the Gene Wilder movie Silver Streak. If you want to see how those were made, I have separate videos that you can go back and find to see how these shells were painted. few weeks ago, I released a video about a repainted O-scale train inspired by the Amazon TV series The Man in the High Castle. In this video, I'll talk about some of the steps taken to make the opening sequence. In the book, as well as the series, mysterious 16mm films from alternate realities play a huge part of the story. The movies are greatly prized by both the resistance fighters and their Nazi overlords. 4 or 5 inches of masking tape, a tube of burnt umber paint, and some water are all that I'll need to make mine look like those used in the movie. The film canisters have usually taken quite a beating as they are smuggled between worlds. Mine look way too nice, so I need to change their appearance and make them look more beaten up. Because the paint I'm using is for watercolors, it's not permanent, and it's easily removed if I make a mistake or need to use the film can in a different way sometime down the road. In Season 1, there's a film labeled "The Grasshopper Lies Heavy," so that's the one I'll try to recreate here. I'm nearly done, but I'll just lift the label, reposition it as if this can has been reused multiple times, add some more paint, and then it's ready for its close-up, Mr. Spielberg. So I have the bootleg underground films from alternate realities, but how can I share their subversive message with the masses? Projectors, of course. I used to be able to find these at Goodwill, and they were pretty cheap, but not anymore. Luckily, I have a few stashed away in Bob's Prop Warehouse, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Bob's Workshop. Copyright 2017, all rights reserved. I even have the original cardboard box for this 8mm projector, but it's a 16mm setup that I need if I'm to accurately recreate the mood from The Man in the High Castle. Fortunately, I have a 16mm projector, and it actually works. The lamp, belts, and motor all still function, even after all these years. I don't have any World War II footage available to me on 16mm film, so I used a video projector and my laptop to cast the image onto the basement wall and myself. In order to travel throughout the Greater Nazi Reich, you'll need your passport or travel papers, oder Reisepass auf Deutsch. I'll start with a document from World War II and trace the lines with basic shapes in Apple's Pages. At this point, I have them in red so that I can see them more clearly, but when I'm done, everything will be black or dark gray to try to closely match the original. I attempted to use the closest font size and styles that I could find. Hopefully, it'll fool the Sicherheitsdienst, or security services, when trying to cross the border into the neutral zone. I'm also going to recreate the Nazi stamps and print the photos onto glossy photographic paper separate from the document. I'll piece them together later. This particular passport is for the leader of the Nazi government in North America. I'll also make one for the main character from the Resistance, and while I'm at it, even one for myself. This is how the passports were used in the opening sequence. Total screen time, 17.4 seconds. Time to make them and assemble the scene, more than 5 hours. Do I use my time wisely? I am not so sure. An unpainted Lionel shell will be the stand-in for the actual Williams F7 that I customized. The light color of the molded plastic is perfect for catching images from my video projector. Again, another thing that is on screen for less than 10 seconds. A BB gun that looks like a 9mm Walther P38 is another detail from the film canister desktop scene. My aunt's old typewriter and a device from the 1930s for measuring amperage help recreate the illusion of a time long past. If you're trying to create a scene from a film that needs phony passports, then why not have some reproduction German military medals too? I bought these over 30 years ago, and just like all of this other stuff, I knew that I'd have a use for it someday. So maybe I'm not a hoarder after all. I might even be a visionary, some could say. Or maybe that's just a textbook definition of a rationalization. You be the judge. So between painting the train, making the props, shooting, and editing, I know that I spent at least 40 hours on just that one video. It was exhausting, but it was also very satisfying when I finished, and I'm glad I went through that entire ordeal, because it really wasn't so bad. It was more a labor of love. I hope you enjoyed this little backstage peek at the making of the train in the High Castle. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. Until next time, thanks for watching, and this has been Bob's Workshop. Take care.